am Mason Bolchi. I'm born and raised here in Mankato. I went to East High School and graduated from there before going on to Gustavus, where I got my degree in 2018. It was interesting growing up in Mankato as a Black person, specifically being mixed race. My mom is Black and my dad is white, and so it was very interesting growing up trying to figure out who I am and what my place is in the world. My white side of my family would continuously try to convince me that I am half white, and kind of neglect the fact that society treats me as a Black man, and when I walk down the street, no one stops and thinks, oh, maybe he's mixed. So I really struggled with that internally, figuring out really who I am. I knew I was treated as Black. I knew that I was raised in a Black household, but I didn't really know exactly how to identify myself and what my place was in the world. I think my experiences in school would definitely made it even tougher. A lot of my friends, I believe that they loved and they accepted me, but I think that they were more colorblind than that they really embraced and loved and respected my Blackness. And I really faced a lot of microaggressions growing up, especially a lot of things like being said like you're an Oreo, where you're Black on the outside and white on the inside, or you speak very well for being a Black person, or just even people straight up telling me, Mason, I don't like Black people, but I think you're okay. And so a lot of friends, a lot of parents of friends would tell me how you don't act Black. As a tennis player, they would say playing tennis isn't Black. You don't play basketball, you play tennis, so you can't be a Black person if that is the case. I wanted to always be proud and embrace my Blackness, but at the same time, I felt like I couldn't because everyone around me was telling me how not Black I am. But yet then you would go down the street, or walk in the mall and you have ladies clutch their purses or people cross the street when you're walking by. So it was interesting for me because I felt very Black in some instances, and then was not allowed to embrace being Black in others. And so I just kind of felt like I was really stuck in the middle, and didn't really know what was right at the time. But I think now I work in Minneapolis and I work in inner city schools with a very diverse population, and I've actually learned so much from the kids, seeing the diversity within the Black community, and seeing kids just being who they are. It really inspired me to embrace that part of myself, and be confident in it. And that doesn't matter what I like, what I wear, what music I listen to. The fact is I'm a Black man, and I'm very, very proud to be. I would never ever change that. But it's just been quite a journey for me figuring out how to embrace that and to not let other people try to define me based on my characteristics. I feel more embraced by friends and family and coworkers now than I did before. I definitely have a much better network at this point. I think my college friends are really, really great. I think being around more educated people has been beneficial for me, that people have learned about these things in higher education and understand it and kind of understand my place in it. But I think growing up, I did not feel that sense of community. I felt very alone, and I knew that I had my family, but other than that, there were not really any other Black families that we knew or spent time around. And so when I tried to bring up issues of race, I think people thought, oh, here goes Mason talking about race again. And so I coped with it by kind of telling jokes, and making white people uncomfortable sometimes. If we were, as a kid, if you're in a store and you're messing around, I would say, oh, I'm gonna be the one that gets in trouble. And the sad part is that that's true, but the only way I could bring it up and express that concern for myself was through a joke. And even then it was just a joke, so I didn't ever really feel heard, but at least I was able to bring it up to some degree at that point. So but now I think I have found my community, I found my network, and I found people that love and care for me as who I am, and not as who they want me to be or how they want to see me. When I look back and think about Black people that were a part of my life, it's very, very few. My best friend was born in Ethiopia and adopted, and we played tennis here from the time I was about 12 years old. And he and his older brother, Ermias, they were my network, they were my family and community outside of the home. But beyond that, I I don't really know that I had much. I mean, there were Black students at school, but I didn't really connect with them a whole lot outside of school. And I think that they were feeling very similar feelings as well, but we just weren't able to connect on that and really, I guess, help each other, you could say. I've been thinking a lot lately about whether my experience growing up Black in Mankato would be different if I grew up even where I'm working now in Minneapolis. And I think that it is a very different experience. I think that experiencing racism is similar, but the lack of a network and a community and people around you and support that look like you and come from similar backgrounds as you and deal with the same issues as you, it just wasn't here for me when I was growing up. And I think that it's there at least much more in more urban areas or areas with higher populations of Black and brown people. When I think about racist experiences that I had as a kid growing up in town, and kind of how that was reacted to by my friends in white community, I think back to my sophomore year. I was reading To Kill a Mockingbird, and at one point my English teacher asked whether racism is still present today. And I, like everyone else, was nodding my head. And then I get called out and she said, "Mason, what's an example of racism?" Thankfully, I grew up talking about it a lot. And so I was ready, but I was very kind of thrown off, and was upset that I was now the spokesperson for Black people and on behalf of my entire class. History class was always very interesting. Anytime somebody would say something about slavery, about half the class would turn around and look at me, and just look for my reaction. And people thought it was kind of funny. And I was very alone in that as well. I don't know that anyone ever said anything. Maybe my friends didn't do it, but they didn't stop it or speak to it at all. And then I think one of the most overt racist experiences that I had, I played football for a year and had a locker in the locker room with my name tag on it, and it was laminated. And the idea was when you had good plays, you would get like scratches or something on there. And so I had gone to an away game, and when I came back, I went to my locker and someone had written in permanent marker, they wrote the N-word on it. And I remember I was very angry. I was extremely upset. And I think that people around me thought it was bad, but I think the perception is often that, oh, something bad happened to you, you cool off and then it's done. But that still sticks with me to this day. I have no idea who did it. The school said that they would look into it, and no one ever asked me any questions. I never heard of them following up with anybody on anything or checking any tapes or whatever. It was just, I felt like it's completely swept under the rug, and that I was so alone in that experience, knowing that there's a classmate or peer that would do something like that and nothing was being done to follow up. I just felt kind of worthless at the time, and like I wasn't valued in my community and I wasn't protected in that sense. When it comes to reacting to racism and expressions of microaggressions or whatever it may be, it's so exhausting because I want to react in the moment. I'm just boiling red hot. But as a Black person, I feel like you always have to be the bigger person. The second I react, then if the police get involved, I'm going to be the aggressor. But even if they're not involved, then you're just confirming their stereotypes. And so I feel like I'm often placed into this box where I can't do anything, and I feel so powerless. I feel like I can't win. I guess I can speak to that further with another example. I was in St. Peter, and I went to the gas station just to get a snack, and I had my back turned to the wall, and I was just to the door, and I was just looking at the nutrition label on some sandwiches, when I felt someone breathing on my neck. And I turned around and this man is just glaring at me. And he said, "Don't do it." And I just was really confused. I was thrown off guard. I had no idea who this was. And I said, "Excuse me?" And I said, "Don't do it, the sandwich." And he was insinuating that I was about to steal the sandwich. And I was so mad. That was probably the closest I've ever been to having any sort of a confrontation on race. I was already worked up because there was a police brutality case that I was talking about immediately beforehand. So I was on fire. But this man was a white supremacist. Um, and I knew that if I reacted and anybody, there's a good chance police get involved. And with the police brutality incident in my head, I just did not need that. And so I knew I needed to walk away, but I had to think for a while where I could even go, because if I went outside, I'm pretty sure this man would have followed me, and I would have been less safe out there. And so I had to walk to the opposite side of the gas station, and I literally stared at a wall for a couple of minutes while he literally laughed at me, took his time. Even after he left the gas station, he sat in his car and glared at me. And so, yeah, I feel entirely powerless. It doesn't matter what my education is. It doesn't matter what I'm doing for a career. It doesn't matter whether I'm a good person or not. These people can completely take away my power, and just my right to exist in their world. And so it's completely and utterly exhausting. And I think that's where we need allies to be able to jump in and to diffuse the situation, stand up for me, and that it isn't just on me to either take it or find a way to articulate my standpoint, well enough that this white supremacist understands. I don't think that the burden should fall entirely on my shoulders. So when it comes to the N-word, it's an extremely problematic word for a lot of reasons. But if you take a quick jog back down history, you learn how the word was used and the power that it had. I know that there's an argument, whether cracker is the same thing as saying the N-word, and it's just not. It's not a nice word to say to call someone, but there is no historical power whatsoever that the word cracker held over anybody. When you look back at Jim Crow, and you see like no N-words allowed, or N-words say here or there is so much societal power behind that word, and everyone knows it too. People don't accidentally use it. If you use that word, you know the power that it holds, and you are exercising that power over someone else. And so it's not an accident. It's always intentional when you say that word, and people know that it's off limits. As far as white people saying, why can black people say it and white people can't? Black people, we've kind of repurposed the word, and also it is a different word. And you could argue that black people shouldn't use it as well, because it still stems from the same oppressive word. But the fact of the matter is, black people weren't using that word to oppress ourselves. It was white people in the institutions that used that word as a means to oppress and lynch and impose their will upon other people. And so there's just no room for that word to be used whatsoever. It has been really interesting for me seeing what people have to say on social media, and other platforms about the riots versus protests and Black Lives Matter movement as a whole. I think I've seen far too many people that were silent about police brutality, to George Floyd, Breonna Taylor, and so many other people that look just like me, but then decided to speak up when they were worried about property being damaged. And I think that says a lot about where we are as a society and where we are as individuals as well, that when there are people that are disproportionately being murdered in the streets, that it's easy to sweep that under the rug. But when there are businesses that are in danger of being burned or looted, that's where people take a stand. And I don't think that riots are a great thing by any means. I'm not happy that my neighborhoods were looted and rioting occurred there. But you have to look at why that's the case. And if you look at the steam that Black Lives Matter has gained after all of these protests, you can see why it's there and why people do that. Black Lives Matter has been doing their work for a number of years now, but it was after George Floyd specifically that people took to the streets and that media decided to cover it, and some individuals did riot and loot, and it's a shame that happened. But if you look at what has come from that, it's been successful, and people do that because they feel that they are not heard otherwise. when you march peacefully. And like people are doing right now at this very moment, people are peaceful, but you don't see it in the media anymore. What they cover is the rioting and the looting, and that's what draws people in. And so it was in a way effective. At least we're having conversations now. At least we're looking at our systems and talking about potentially defunding the police. And so it's interesting that I think no matter how you protest, people tell you should do it differently. Black Lives Matter has blocked interstates to say, oh, you should go somewhere else. When they went in the airport, they said, oh, you should go somewhere else. And so they're always going to critique the way that you protest. Basically, what they want is they want you to be quiet and accept the status quo. And so if you're critiquing how people are protesting but not listening to the subject matter that they're speaking on, I think you should pause for a second and think about where you are coming from and where your priorities lie. Do they lie with lives that are at stake and people that are being oppressed, or do you care more about the status quo and keeping property safe? I think it's really interesting today that people get so defensive when they hear that they might have privilege or that they could have done something that was inadvertently racist. And people just get so defensive because they think if I do something racist, or if I'm called racist by somebody, or if I have privilege, that I am no longer a good person. And we think that only racists are bad people, or only bad people are racist, I guess I should say. And that's just not the case. Our system is set up with racist institutions, and if we all partake in those institutions without stopping, pausing, and then trying to do something to fix those institutions, you are participating in a racist society and you are benefiting from it. And so you don't have to be a bad person to be racist. You can be well-intentioned, but still inadvertently say racist things or participate in the society. I see white fragility as that defensive reaction to talking about race, or if you get called out, sometimes, if someone is told to check their privilege, they immediately get defensive and feel like someone is saying that you didn't work hard for what you have. And that defensive reaction right away just shuts down any potential for growth. And so it's important for people to work to be anti-racist, which is not just being, not the process of just not being racist, but you are actively working to make yourself better, and to be a better ally, and to be aware of your actions so that you are not inadvertently being racist. It takes work. It doesn't just happen automatically because of the way that we've been socialized. It's not any individual's fault. It's just our society. But we need to wake up and see it for what it is, and then decide that we're going to do something about it. When I think about those who I feel are the strongest allies for me at this time, especially white allies, I think of people that have checked in with me and have been very, very real and understanding that I'm experiencing a lot of pain right now. I'm generally tired right now compared to normal, and I think that those who are the strongest allies have realized that, checked in with me. And I think a great way to figure out how you can help is to simply ask, what can I do right now? Because for every person and any given day, it could be different. It's not your job to try and be a mind reader and guess. No one expects you to be an expert in that way, but at least care and extend the hand and ask, what can I do for you right now? I think that you'd be really interested, or you'd find some really interesting results there. And it's just a really, really good way to help. I think the other way is just to be vocal, not just on social media when it's comfortable, but I think you need to equip yourself with the knowledge of how you can help, and then use that knowledge to make a difference. When you're around Black people who are experiencing racism, and when you're away from them and you're at the family dinner table and somebody says a racist joke, that's your opportunity to be an ally for people of color.